Hey guys, how's it going out there? Hope you guys are doing well. So today I'm going to be talking about a little bit of Marvel news because Kevin Feige said something a little bit interesting recently. He was talking about pretty much how after Secret Wars, there's the possibility of the MCU doing pretty much a reboot. Which I think is probably the best thing. I really think the best thing for the MCU is after Secret Wars to do a full reboot. Now, where I kind of disagree with Kevin Feige, because it seems like if they do a reboot, they're kind of wanting to keep the same characters but recast them. See, I'm kind of a little bit different on that. I think they should reboot the MCU, but I don't think that they should reboot it with any of the current, well, maybe not the current, but like the original Avengers. Like, I don't think they should reboot it with like a new person playing Thor and Iron Man and Hulk. And I guess this is kind of the problem with a reboot, because like on the one hand, I really do think that at this point the MCU needs just a full on 100% reboot. But then at the same time, as like that's a good thing, there's a lot of good things with the MCU. Like, I don't think that every single character that's been introduced should be like recast or redone or erased, because we've gotten to the point now where there's just so many characters in the MCU. It's impossible to keep up with. Matter of fact, Kevin Feige said in the recent interview that like a lot of the characters that have been introduced in post-credit scenes in the recent phases, a lot of them probably won't come back. Which, I mean, I could have told you that, because there's just so many characters they have, but there's a lot of good characters. Like, I don't think that they should recast the Guardians if they do a reboot. But at the same time, it kind of begs the question, like, if you don't do like 100% reboot, I mean, you might as well just keep the same people. But I think that at this point, like with the multiverse and the multiversal timelines and alternate realities, like the cohesion of the MCU is just a fucking mess right now. Like, no one can make sense of anything. They have too much shit going on that even they can't keep track of. Fans can't keep track of it. Actors can't keep track of it. Right? No one can keep track of the shit going on in this universe now. It's gotten so over convoluted, over complicated, and one of the biggest things that they did, which was in hindsight, which people at the time were saying was a disaster, kind of was one of them. Trying to introduce this whole multiverse thing was just destined for disaster, because the thing about multiversal stories is that they can work, but only if you do them, I think, like in a one-off, or if that's like the main story you're doing. Yeah, I don't think that doing a grand multiverse really lends itself well to this very extensively well-connected cinematic universe that's been going for a decade. I really don't think doing a multiverse really works yet, because I mean, it begs the question of like, what's the point of having any investment in characters or stakes? Because, well, there's 100 different versions of this character out there, and there's 100 different universes out there, 100 different Earths, and 100 different of everybody. So like, why does it matter if this one character is killed or if this one planet's killed? Like, you lose a lot of stakes and a lot of really like a lot of like connection that the audience has with characters, because when you have 100 different characters of the same characters, like, well, why do I care about this one specific one? I mean, even if this one dies, there's like 15 more out there and 15 more universes. So I think that introducing the whole multiverse and trying to make that like a center point was disaster. But then also just making all of the excessive shows, which even the MCU has admitted was a mistake. I don't think that all of the shows were a mistake to make. I liked WandaVision, and I feel like WandaVision, among all the other shows, was the one show that was promising, and I really liked it till the end. I liked WandaVision until the end of it, and I felt like if they had just kind of limited the amount of shows and movies they had, I think that WandaVision could have actually tied in well to the MCU. Like, I think WandaVision could have been a really good stepping stone, or like a really good setup for the rest of the MCU going forward. And what I mean by that is, you could have easily used WandaVision to tie into Doctor Strange 2, which they did do, but they didn't do it, I think, that well. You could have used it to connect to She-Hulk. And you could also have used it as a great setup for the rest of the MCU. Like, She-Hulk, in the comics, not so much in the movies per se. She is known as like pretty much like the lawyer for superheroes. Like she's kind of like the Better Call Saul almost. Maybe not that exactly, but pretty much like the legal team for the superheroes. So what you could have easily had done is you could have had it where after Wanda, goes off and yeah, it is revealed that she's taken over the town. You could have had it where Doctor Strange shows up at the end of WandaVision, ends up restraining Wanda. She ends up being put into Shield or the government's custody, and it causes a whole kind of reopening of the Accords from Civil War about like what happens when you let superheroes without any supervision or restraints be let to their own devices, and how with what Wanda did, this is a good example for why there needs to be legal, tight legal oversight over what superheroes do and how they are able to conduct themselves. Otherwise, you get to a Westview situation. And you could have had it where She-Hulk is the one that has to take counsel for Wanda and kind of has to argue on her behalf, about like why, superheroes should be able to act on their own or whatever, whatever the stance would be from her, from She-Hulk. But see, that would have been cool, but the thing is, when they were making all these shows, they weren't really concerned with making them connect with the rest of the MCU. They were just kind of just making shit and putting it out there and just moving on to the next thing. Like, that WandaVision for me really was kind of the beginning where I kind of saw that the MCU was about to fall off, because one of the things that the MCU did really good for a long time is that it was good at keeping cohesion and keeping stakes and consequences throughout all the films. Like, things that happened 2 films ago would be brought up again in another film or another project, but it would connect. And with WandaVision, pretty much like once WandaVision was over, they were like, okay, we did that. Now it's time to set up for Doctor Strange 2 and America Chavez and all the other shit. They were done with that. And it's like, man, like if you're not invested as the creators of these shows and movies, like if you're not invested in the stakes and the stories, then why should we be? And I feel like WandaVision was kind of the beginning. Like an indicator of like where the MCU is going to go with all these different shows they're making. And, so I think that at this point, once they've gotten done with Doomsday and Secret Wars, I think that if they do go the reboot route, I think that they should do it in a way where I don't think you should bring back all the original characters. At this point, having, Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, the original Avengers, I don't think that you need them anymore. I think you could perfectly not have them be involved, because at this point, the MCU has moved past them. And I think that they should focus on other characters. I don't think you should keep going back to trying to have another Iron Man or another Captain America. I think they should just try to make a new universe, like a completely from scratch. And yeah, I would keep most. I mean, I think that they shouldn't get rid of every single character, like recasting them. I think that the Guardians should stay. Now, I know that the Guardians is kind of tricky because I would say half of the Guardians actors, like Dave Bautista, he said that he's kind of done with the MCU. Star-Lord, he's going to be back. It seems like more or less, it seems like the Guardians are kind of in a weird area because James Gunn's at DC and Guardians has been kind of really attached, connected to James Gunn. So, not really sure what's going to happen with the Guardians going forward anyways. But nonetheless, if they would agree to come back, I would keep most of the Guardians. I think that they're good. I think that I haven't seen them film yet, but they seem to be a good Fantastic Four. I think you should keep the Fantastic Four. I think you should keep probably a handful of the current actors and characters. Doctor Strange is one, Spider-Man's one. There's a few you should keep. There's a few you should get rid of. I think that a reboot would also allow them to just pretty much get rid of all the excessive shit that they have put into this universe. Get rid of all the multiverses. Get rid of all of these excessive characters. Get rid of all that and just start from ground zero and go from there. Keep a core cast of characters, build on them, and go from there. You don't need to have 1,000 different characters, and every post-credit scene doesn't need to set up a whole new other, group of characters that we're never going to see again, or some villain that we're never going to see again. Like in the Celestials or the Eternals, Arishem showed up. We're probably never going to see him again. Mephisto just showed up in Ironheart. Probably never going to see him again. Hercules showed up in Thor. Probably never going to see him again. Clea showed up at the end of Doctor Strange 2. Probably never going to see her again. And then we had America Chavez show up in Doctor Strange 2. Probably never going to see her again. You got Moon Knight, who has been just pretty much missing in action. Then you've had, who else have you had? Oh, you had Kamala Khan, who was in the Marvels, and that film failed, so where she's going to show up again is to be seen. You have the new Guardians that Rocket's leading after Guardians 3. Then you have Shang-Chi, who has not been seen. Then you got Scar, Hulk's son, who's not been seen since She-Hulk. Then you got She-Hulk herself. She-Hulk has also been MIA. Then you got, Deadpool, Wolverine, wherever the hell they're going to show up again. So you have all these characters that have been set up and introduced, and nothing has been done with them. And nothing probably will be done with them. So, yeah, I think at this point, just completely clean, completely wipe the slate clean. Go from there. The one thing I would hope that they would do is just not, because it seems like they're trying to pretty much make the MCU kind of go back to a blank phase 1 where they're going to have all the original characters recast. And they're also, apparently Kevin Feige, he was talking about how after Doomsday and Secret Wars, they're going to recast the X-Men and actually have what will be the main cast of X-Men going forward. And I mean, that also, the fact that they have openly admitted that the X-Men we're seeing in Doomsday and Secret Wars are not going to be the main X-Men going forward, to me, it's just kind of a waste of time because, and this also kind of ties in with why this whole multiversal shit has been just a disaster, is because when you keep, and maybe it's just me, but when you keep introducing the same characters over and over again, and they either end up just being wasted or killed off, completely wasted, or not used at all, to me it kind of devalues those characters. It's cool to see the X-Men, but at this point we've had 20 years of the X-Men films, and then we're going to have the old X-Men, a strange mix mash of them, come back for the next 2 films, and then we're going to get rid of them and have a whole new other group of X-Men characters. And it's man, just get rid of the old and just have the new ones. Stop having 100 different X-Men variants. At this point, how many Professor X's have there been? There's been Professor X in the original X-Men films, and then there was Professor X in Logan, and then there was Professor X and Doctor Strange 2. It's man, how many times are we going to see all these characters show up and be killed again? Fucking Professor X, that guy can't catch a break. He dies in every fucking film he's in. The poor guy just can't catch a break at all. So yeah, to me that's also kind of frustrating, where it's they're openly admitting that, yeah, once we're done with the next 2 films, we're gonna actually cast the who are gonna be the main X-Men. It's man, well then, what are we doing wasting our time on these old X-Men? You didn't have to bring them back. As far as I'm aware, Marvel didn't have to bring back all of the old X-Men actors, but first of all, it's good for nostalgia, because everyone knows the original X-Men films, even though that they were not, well received, not the best films. People do have an attachment to them. People do even though the films have had a mixed legacy over the years, people do pretty much as an universal agreement, people do the film, do the characters in the films. So, they're bringing them back obviously for that. But yeah, so that's just another thing where it's if you're gonna have these characters be recast again, because they've been recast several times, then just have the new actors take over for the next 2 films and keep them for the reboot. I don't know why you have to do this where you bring variants back that we really are not going to know in this universe, have them die or get killed off, and then bring in a whole new group of X-Men. I mean, it's just a waste of time. But that's those are my thoughts on it. I was just wanting to talk about this because I think it's interesting to think about, the MCU at this point doing a reboot because it's become so massive. It's hard to kind of figure out what would a reboot really look like, and I think even they're probably gonna have to think about that. But with that said, I'm gonna call it a day here. Let me know if you're interested in in Marvel rebooting or what you'd keep if they do reboot. But with that said, I'm gonna call it a day here, and I'll see you guys later.